NST. And this guy's down on the golf course waiting for the snow to melt off, but while he is doing that, he is watching college basketball. And certainly on Monday night, we were all glued to the sets, and some folks made their way down to College Park for the late tip, an 8:30 tip, and kids aren't back yet, and the place wasn't filled up, and the Terps got off to an incredible start over Wisconsin, and then somehow, after my wife fell asleep at halftime, managed to almost lose the game. Robert Canady joins us now from the bikini wax greens of Compass Point Golf Course down in Pasadena, where he also doubles as our college basketball insider on the local hardwoods. Boy, the Terps are giving it a ride here as the 19th ranked team in the country and getting off to a gaudy start, but certainly a tale for Mark Turgeon to tell of caution for the rest of the year as to what happens when you get ahead by 20 points, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they had kind of reversed the trend of where they had gotten behind early and, you know, had comeback wins, and the Monday night they got out to that great start in the first half, and even all the way to the 10-minute mark of the second half, they withstood a little run by Wisconsin and still maintained like an 18-point lead before Wisconsin just got red hot from three and, you know, ultimately took a 1-point lead before Callan did what Callan does. You know, seems to be a big shot guy, you know, so that's I think Turgeon said afterwards that, you know, that maybe he was looking for the silver lining in this, but he said winning a game like this might do more for them in the long run than if they'd gone ahead and won by 22 or so. So, you know, there's probably something to that, the way that they, you know, gave it up, but showed resiliency in coming back and hanging in there and, you know, pulling out a win when it looked like it might slip away from them.
Well, you mentioned Cowan, and we talk about the special players that have been around. I ran into Walt Williams a couple weeks ago, had him on. I certainly consider him one of the special players, and Keith Booth and the whole championship team and those guys. But Melo Trimble's probably the only guy in recent time that was always sort of there to drain a three, to beat Michigan State or something, to win a big game if they're going to win a big game. And Cowan feels to me to be more than like, let's say, Morcell right now, to have the ball in his hands, or Ayala in a big situation. They want the ball in Cowan's hands, and when he's going well, they're going to win. And much like with Trimble, when he wasn't going well and the hamstring wasn't right, the shots were coming up short, they weren't going to win. I kind of feel that way with Cowan, and I'll say that in January. And you wake me in March when they're in the tournament and they're a 6 seed or whatever they're going to be in the tournament, that on the nights when Cowan does well, they're going to win. And you're going to look up, and the night that they get eliminated, it's going to be because he doesn't play well or somebody does something to neutralize him.
Yeah, that's very well possible. And up to this point, he has proven that you have to give it to him. I mean, he just looked so cool when he hit that shot. It didn't look like there was any hesitancy at all, and was in rhythm, and it was even a step or two beyond the 3-point line where he saw he had a brief opening. And
it had a little Steph Curry demeanor to it. As much as we talk about finger wagging and showboating and spiking the ball, all of the histrionics, Steph Curry may have set the trend for, I just make these 50-foot shots, and I just make them, and I walk away, and I have a stone-faced assassin look to me. He has a little bit of that going on, don't you think?
Yeah, he does. Like a quiet confidence, like I've done this before. I've been there. No big deal. And the thing is, statistically, he's not the best 3-point shooter on the team.
Sure.
That would be Ayala. Who hit a couple big threes as well early on, and hit one key as well.
But wake me when he's the one that they're
right.
When they're down 2 and have 4 seconds left and need to inbound the ball. They're not trying to get it to anybody other than him, I would think, at this point, and he's become that guy, right, for them.
Yeah, he has. I mean, his overall percentage may not be that high, but I'd like to see his percentage in the last 5 minutes. I bet it's probably far and above everything else. He just seems to hit them when he needs to hit them. And
well, they haven't lost in a month. Let's start with that, and they're in the Big Ten. So it's not like, when does the real season start? It started a month ago, and they haven't lost yet. I mean, hey, right? I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, no, 5 in a row, to start this conference season here in the new year. And, they've done exactly what you couldn't have asked any more of them. They held the home court advantage by beating a couple ranked teams at home. Now we'll get to see them go on the road and, against an Ohio State team that, maybe they're not, on top of the pack, but they're still a contender. They're still, won 12 games on the season. They've lost a couple tough ones at home in the conference season. Matter of fact, I don't think they've won since the January conference season started. Odd thing, I think they won the 2 early December games, that were played in conference, but then have lost the 3 since the turn of the calendar. So that'll be a chance for them to go on the road and in a tough environment, and then of course there'll be the big matchup that we'll all be looking for next Monday night against Michigan State. At Michigan State. So that'll be a real good test to see how they measure up.
Robert Canady can be found out on Twitter at Buckets and Birds. He does birds over Compass Point Golf for all of your events in springtime and when the snow melts and it gets above 32 degrees, you want to go hit the ball. Even if you just want to stop by and have a cocktail and watch the games, you can do that as well down at Compass Point Golf as they're getting ready for the season and we're getting ready for basketball. You mentioned the Terps and where we are and the growth of these players and who's going to take the big shot. That's kind of obvious, and then we're going to see on a night-to-night basis where we are with Bruno Fernando, who has really established himself and I think sticks as well as we get into this thing, and they haven't lost in a month, that this isn't a one-trick pony. Those Mellow Trimble teams tended to be that way. This team has some depth, some inside, 7, 8 guys now that Turgeon's trying to work through this thing. They found themselves unlikely in a game the other night, which may serve them well, certainly over the next week or two, whether it's, Ohio State and, having to do that and go on the road, or whether it's, further on down the line trying to figure out their way out to East Lansing after that. They're going to be called upon, and the guys in the middle and rebounding and making shots and being tough and not getting yourself into foul trouble, as Wisconsin found out early in the game as well the other night, that's going to be a big part of this thing. I mean, this part of the story was keeping Happ off the court, right?
Yeah, no, they did. I mean, they did a good job on him defensively. I think he got frustrated, and then he picked up a couple quick fouls there in the second half. Got 3 and 4 really quickly, and it looked like they were going to be in a strong advantage the last 10 minutes. But gosh, 30 seconds, 40 seconds after he picked up his fourth, Bruno picked up his fourth, so it kind of negated that advantage. But yeah, going back to the depth of this team, Turgeon has definitely found he's going 8 deep now. That's something he talked about early in the year that he needed to develop some depth there. And one of those guys that's coming off the bench is Ricky Lindo, and to me he's done nothing but impress more and more the more they get into the season. I think he's going to be a key thing for them. He's probably their best defender, from what I can tell.
Well, he's got a little mouton in him, right? I mean, there's like this energy that comes to the floor. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. He's picking fouls up and whatnot, but that's pretty much his job. I mean, played 23 minutes, picked up 3 fouls. Some of them were ugly. One of them, could have been called. And I guess when you look back, he got most of the ball, but he is a shot of adrenaline for the team, which is exactly what you want from a guy coming off the bench, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he comes in, provides that energy, whether it's a spark on defense to stop a hot hand, although it seemed like no one was able to do that in the second half against those threes Wisconsin was hitting. But, he's quick in transition and, like you said, provides that energy, the same thing that you see from Fernando. And, you see a lot of that throughout this team, which, maybe they didn't have a lot of that in the past. We talked about Melo being the kind of the one guy that they relied upon for that and really couldn't look anywhere else. And, yeah, we talked about Cowan being a guy that's going to take the big shot, but, the farther they get into this season, you feel comfortable with, Bruno if he's got a good matchup down low, or Ayala or Wiggins or, Jalen Smith, as far as if he gets overlooked. It's a pretty good 1-2 combo in there. And he's still feeling his way through the Big Ten conference season. He's had a couple up and down games, but for the most part, he's performed really well, and it'll be interesting to see how he does on these 2 road games coming up in Ohio State, Michigan. Good chance for him to really kind of get some Big Ten road legs and get a good field for the conference.
I want to talk with you about the UMBCs and the Towsons and the Coppins and all that good stuff. But before we do that, it is a chance for both of us to, heap a little bit of a poop on Duke after they lose to Syracuse. So I want to at least allow you to do that on a night when Maryland wins and Duke loses. You get the daily double on Monday. That kicks off the Hoops week nice with a ranked Maryland team and a losing Duke team, right?
Yeah, maybe the only better thing than seeing Duke lose Monday night was watching the reactions in the stand of the students and the old blue sweater crowd. Like, this can't be happening to us. We don't lose to Syracuse in Cameron Indoor. It was like a stunned look. And so yeah, they are not invincible. Despite what everyone's been led to believe up to this point. They were missing a couple key players last night in the Monday night game, but. it's it definitely brings a smile to your face if you see the Dukies lose.
Warms the soul, as they say. Local scene right now, Coppin got a win, then they start losing some games. UMBC's losing some games. What's going on around here, man? I mean, it's sort of in the water. Nobody won this week, right?
No, I mean, I think it was this time last week we were talking about, Coppin being off to a good good start in their conference at 2-0, and they've lost 2 since. And Towson's lost 2 games. They had a non-conference game, home game against Cornell, which is a really good Cornell team. I got out to that game and enjoyed watching them, and it'll be interesting to see, how they fare in the Ivy League. But they gave Towson, all they could handle. And then UMBC went on the road for a couple tough games. The America East is what it is. It's a pretty balanced conference. You still look up there at top and you see Vermont, and you see Stony Brook and everything. And in the end, we'll see if UMBC can find that right rhythm as they get toward the end of the conference season. Again, we've talked about how much they lost from last year.
I'm interested to see how much of an advantage or not the home floor is. I mean, they worked so hard and couldn't get into their own building and, all the other. Now they're in the building. They won this legendary game. From what I can tell, they haven't sold a ticket, based on, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's any, sort of big hubbub that everybody's running to UMBC to watch them play because they won last year. I think the expectations are higher from a casual fan standpoint, but this is where they have to make hay and win home games in their conference. And I thought the RAC was a really cozy, nasty little place to play when the band got on you and whatnot. I don't know what the big gym's going to be down there with a team that has some expectations that things might not be as good as they're going to be last year when you beat one of the number 1 teams in the country,
Yeah, and it's the same thing kind of Towson found out, 4 or 5 years ago when they moved from the Towson Center to CQ. I mean, the Towson Center with Jarrell Benjamin in it, and that team, it was packed, 2,500 every night, and made it feel like 8,000 in there, and that's what those small gyms do, and the RAC was that way to a large extent, with only the 5 or 6 rows, right there, right behind the bench, and much smaller environment, and they're still drawing 12, 14, 1,500 to a game, but in a 5,000 seat building, it's noticeable that it's not the environment that you had in those smaller gyms. And, we've talked about this over time. It takes, for these type programs, for the Towsons, for the UMBCs, and even the Coppins, it takes winning. That's, being 500 and being in contention in the middle of your conference is going to, keep the loyal alumni and the students there to some extent. It takes sustained winning to bring them out. Even Towson, has been great up until the last 2 seasons of the regular season, but hadn't done anything really in the conference tournament to get people excited. So it's kind of, they haven't yet built anything sustained to build that enthusiasm and to fill CQ. And I think it'll take that for UMBC, whether it's another tournament run, that they get home court for the first couple games and then pull off an upset to get back in the tournament. That would be a great way to build upon it. But, that is the one advantage they have in their conference, that, as long as they finish, second or third in the conference, they're going to have a home court advantage right up until the finals. So, and that's important in that type of conference, and where everyone's so equal, or you may play a dominant team like Vermont, that comes in and, is kind of the class of the conference.
By the way, Loyola did win on Saturday. They beat Army, so I do want to give them at least a tip of the cap and say that. Robert Canady's here, Buckets and Birds, the way to find him out on Twitter, all things college basketball, all over the hardwoods, where it has been a rough week or two. I would say this even on the college basketball scene. There's sort of Maryland and everything else. Maryland's really good this year, despite almost blowing the game to Wisconsin. I think the spotlight on Maryland right now over the next 6 or 8 weeks and seeing all the empty seats in their gym, and we talk about Towson trying to sell tickets and UMBC and quite frankly, my relationship with them and you getting around to these mostly empty gyms on mostly losing nights. Maryland is the beacon of hope here and sort of carrying the torch now that the Redskins and the Ravens have been eliminated. And, where we are, this should be the time for the Terps to shine and for Turgeon to shine and the Big Ten to shine and TV numbers and people interested on cold nights. I'm not feeling it, Robert. I'm not. I mean, I don't know what the Terps can do other than win, as you've pointed out, but they are interesting, and none of the rest of this really kind of is.
Right, and I'll give Monday night kind of a semi-mulligan on that. With the weather and the students didn't turn out there. I think I'm not sure. I think they're still on break. I think they come back in a
Well, you
week
can't
or
have
so.
much more prosperity than being ranked. In the
Right.
annals of Maryland basketball over the last 25 years, how many games have they played at home while being ranked? A few during the tournament time at Williams at the turn of the century, but in the last 15 years, how many home-ranked games have they played in conference? Not many. Not many.
No, you definitely have to go back to your ACC days to see that on a regular basis, and back in the Gary Williams days, where they had that run of 11 straight NCAA tournaments, that came to an end a few years back, and they've missed 3 of the last 4. So, there is definitely some ground to make up there to get back into a sustained winning program. The Friday night game, now granted, a lot of there were to see. You had some marquee matchups with the Indiana players, Morgan and whatnot. There were like 30-some NBA scouts there Friday night. So, and the crowd was a sellout crowd and near capacity. So you had that environment, on Friday night for a big name team. Indiana, ranked, the history and everything. Wisconsin probably still, to the local area fans here, are probably still thought more of as a football school. Truthfully, that's what they are. But they have a great basketball team as well in tradition, but not as strong as the football. So.
Yeah, but you know what it takes? It takes a kid from Alabama walking through the crowd to. It takes a football player to make a basketball game work, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was a good environment for him to see and everything. So we'll see what comes of that.
Come on, baby, make it hurt so good. That's what I said.
It was better for him to be there than versus maybe a Tuesday night against Radford in December.
No doubt. Hey, man, always good to catch up with you. A lot of basketball down the pipeline, including our friends at Coppin State. Heard here on WNST. They lost a tough buzzer beater to South Carolina State the other day. We're going to grab Juan and grab him before we get down to Atlanta. Tell me what's going on at Compass Point, because I know these are the tough days and the rejuvenation days, as they say on golf courses locally here in January.
Yeah, definitely, and definitely not the bikini wax greens you mentioned. More like the ski sloped greens out there right now. You can come out with your cross country skis, and maybe that's a market we ought to tap into for the next few weeks or whatever. But as far as you mentioned earlier, the grill is open, the bar's open. We have DirecTV in there, so Sunday, Championship Sunday, is still. The bar would be open, even though the course isn't. Probably we'll still have snow on the ground, as long as we don't get snowed in again on Sunday.
Well, you can't have any excuse for not having cold beer when there's snow out on the course. If all I can see
Absolutely
is snow, the beer better be cold.
Bud Lights right there in the snow, right outside the door.
Don't give me any of that urine. I don't want any of that 65-degree beer. No, none
of that around here.
Serve it at the appropriate temperature for the football game. So. Well, you're a Redskin guy. I'm a Ravens guy. This is where we get to lick our wounds and all hate on the Patriots if we want to, right?
Right, 4 good matchups. Patriots. It's the team to root against, everything. But I'm looking forward to seeing. I wouldn't mind seeing a Rams Chiefs Super Bowl. See the 2 young guns in there at quarterback go shoot it out against each other. I think that would be something interesting to see. Nothing against the Saints, but I think everyone's seen enough of the Patriots in this movie. So let's see if we can get some new blood in there.
Well, Luke and I will be gathered in Atlanta, and we just don't want to talk about Tom Brady for another 7 days leading up to Super Bowl 53. So we'll be there 2 weeks from now. You will be out at Compass Point for all events. Go to compasspointgolf.com to learn more about Robert Canady, as well as at Buckets and Birds as he does the basketball thing. Hey, man, last thing on the Redskins-Ravens thing for you is I got like 3 or 4 of you in my life, Redskins fans that are in my phone or whatnot. Dude, if somehow Joe Flacco winds up going to the Redskins for a 3rd-round draft pick or something, I just don't want to picture him in burgundy and gold. I just don't want to see that. Let him go to Jacksonville, Denver, Miami. It doesn't matter. I just don't want to see him with the Redskins, for me.
Yeah, I can see that from your standpoint. I think there's probably a lot of Redskins fans that, with a known situation of what's going to happen to QB next year, would certainly welcome him, as far as what other prospects we might be facing, as far as not really up high enough in the draft to get one of the top guys. I saw Kyler Murray declared, but would he be there at 15 or is he going to be?
Go sign Nick Foles, dude. Nick Foles would be a great Redskin quarterback. You get 2 games with the E. You know what I mean? That That would stir things up in your division. Sign him. Leave Flacco alone.
I think we could forgive that green. That green he used to wear if he ended up there.
I want to root for Joe Flacco, not against him. You know what I mean? That's part of the issue for me. So,
hey, I would take at this point as a Redskins fan, I would take either one of those in burgundy and gold, and take our chances versus where we stand right now. So,
two decades later, Marvin Lewis and I still don't discuss that period, that time. That time in his life there of dysfunction.
Wow.
And the ball coach.
So I don't blame him. I think he's moved on like probably every other coach from that situation has moved on from. So it's not a great time to be a Redskins fan. We just kind of the only thing is the best thing about being a Redskins fan this week was that both the Cowboys and the Eagles lost. In the playoffs this weekend. If they had both somehow made it in the championship game, I might have buried myself in the snow outside the door here. So.
Oh, I'm just saying. Hey, have a great week. We'll check you out, and hopefully anybody, Coppin, UMBC, Towson, somebody win this week besides Loyola, okay?
Let's talk about some wins next week. That would be good in addition to Maryland's 2 big wins that they may have coming up. That'll let's get some other wins throughout the area going.
In the top 25, headed to Columbus and East Lansing. They're in the Big Ten for real this week. Robert Canady can be found Buckets and Birds out on Twitter as well as at compasspointgolf.com. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox free of charge. Mobile device, your laptop, your iPad, wherever it is, you get it at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Always $5 down, $10 a month, but it was $1 down at $10 a month for the new year. Try to get that deal. Get on over to Planet Fitness at PlanetFitness.com. Also, the Maryland Jockey Club and our friends at Laurel Park. They're racing this weekend when the snow is not around, getting ready for Triple Crown season, and they have the beautiful, lush Sports Palace down there, the new sports bar at Laurel Park. If you haven't been to Laurel lately, you haven't been there at all, get on down there and check it out for the racing season. I'm getting ready. I think we're going to throw a little Kentucky Derby party down there in May, so I want to make sure I'm circling. I got my calendar out now, so I'm working on all my big weekends. We're going to be in Atlanta in 2 weeks, owners' meetings in March. We got the Combine in late February. Opening day is March 28th at Yankee Stadium this year, so lots of moving parts here as we get ready for what I call the off-season, but certainly Oriole baseball, Terps conversation this week, Ravens residue, and what's going to happen to Joe Flacco and Terrell Suggs and Eric Weddle and Marshall Yonda and C.J. Mosley all ahead. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.